Erev Yom Kippur, we were talking about this whole idea of when you can and should not testify. There are times when your testimony would be considered to be sinful if it's only to tattletale on something that was done in the past that has no bearing on future behavior. So we said only if it's a davar shebemamon, if it's for financial matters, and you're one witness, that can be helpful to a beis din, and therefore you should testify. Or lahafrish mi iser, to prevent someone from doing something prohibited, where the Imrei Yaakov says, "Afilu b'makom sheyesh safek im ya'aminu lidvarav." Even in a situation where you're not sure that they're going to believe you, you still have an obligation to, let's say, tell the rabbanim, tell the beis din that this fellow is committing, whatever, and we need to stop him. But if, however, it's only on something that he did in the past, and it has no bearing on the future, eno ela k'motzi shemra, then all you're doing is committing motzi shemra. And I mentioned to you that famous quote, "Tuvia chata zigod ingod," right? A lot of times people will use that phrase by saying, like, "Why are you taking it out on me? Take it out on the other guy," is really, and then there's a response by the Gemara that the reason why Zigod got lashes is because Histam was just speaking Lashon Hara. And then he said that Umikol Makom Yachol Legalos Hadavar Bahatsneya Larabo Leish Sodo. This is what we left off with. You could reveal it, however. Let's say something really is disturbing to you, and you are very, very bothered by the fact that you've seen someone do something that is highly questionable or unethical or immoral, and you just need to get it off your chest. You're allowed to reveal it to one person. The Chafetz Chaim brings this down also. Im yodea ki yamin dvarav kishdivrei shnei edim. If you know that this person will believe you, and you do it to be able to remove some of the trauma, the psychological trauma, perhaps, from knowing what you've seen. Umutar l'rabo lisno oso avor zeh. It is also permitted for, if you tell it to your Rebbe, the Rebbe can bear malice towards this fellow. And it is permitted to distance yourself until you know that this person has repented. Now, there's a qualification on this. The Chafetz Chaim in the Sefer writes that if you see a Talmud Chacham sin, he quotes the Gemara, if you see a Talmud Chacham sin at night, you have to assume that by morning he's repented. So how do you balance these two, right? How do you balance this? The way that the Imrei Yaakov has phrased it here in his commentary disturbs me, because why don't you just confront the person? Why don't you just go over to him and say, there's something that I saw that you did that was very disturbing to me, and I just need to talk to you about it, because what I saw appears to be something incorrect, inappropriate, and can I ask you? And you have to wait for the response, right? Maybe you misread the situation. Maybe it was his sister that he was having coffee with, and you thought and that's why he gave her a hug or whatever it was, So you don't know. You don't know what's going on until you actually get to the. Ella kimotzi shemra. It's motzi shemra if you come as one witness to testify to a beis din about what someone has done in the past. But you are allowed to testify about someone, even if it's only something that he did in the past, if because there may be benefit for the Beis Din to know this. If this person is going to be called as a witness, they'll know that this person, let's say, uh, may be doing something that would make him puzzle for Avis. Let's say he's not really Shomer Shabbos or whatever it is. So then if two people are aware of this information, then it's beneficial for Beis Din to know. Kimotzi Shemra, Kasav B'shut Shaul U'Meishiv, Zelashono. Ish echad shebala hayid al echad sheratza lahaskir atzma lios bal tefila b'yomim noraim. Oh, very, very topical issue. A man comes to testify. A guy has put his name out there to be hired as the chazan for the Yomim Noraim at a community. No one knows him. Sends out his CV, and a guy from another town knows him. He knows this guy's behavior. And he wants to come and say to the community, don't hire this guy because he's not a good guy. He does things that he fraternizes with women. He goes to bars, when doesn't have the big white hat on, right? I've seen him in other situations. The Ga'arti ba'ed hahu, and the Shaul U'Meishiv, is that Rav Gestetner? I don't remember who the Shaul U'Meishiv is. Just give me 1 second. Shoot. Shoel U'Meishiv. Oh, you're right. No, it's Yosef Yisrael Nathanson. Was written is published in the 19th century. Okay, of Nathanson. So he says, "V'ga'arti ba'ed hahu, v'amarti da'asulo lahayid." So I said to this fellow, "How can you testify? You're not kosher to testify. You're one witness." V'hayaroi bizman habayis lilkoso mimasa detuv yachata v'zigod mingid ad kan devarav. He says only in the times of he says if this guy who testified had been alive in the times of the Beis Hamikdash, it would have been worthy. He would have, this one witness who came forward to testify that this guy, he knows this guy from the other town, and he's not a savory character. It would have been worthwhile to give him malchus. The imyodeya ha'ed shehu meheman kebeitrei yachol lahoid kid la'el divrei maschel ve'eno. However, if the Beis Din trusts this fellow as two witnesses, he can testify, as we saw before, that if the Beis Din really, this person's reputation is a sterling reputation, then you can testify. I must tell you that I don't know anyone in this community that is trustable like two witnesses. Mm-hmm. I've seen so much Lashon Hara circulate. I remember shortly after I had arrived here, a rabbi called me up to say that he had heard that at a wedding that I officiated, I kissed the Kala. Yeah. I said, what? I said, what? I said, was it perhaps because it was my daughter, right? That I officiated my daughter? No. This was some. I said, it's not true. There is so much nonsense that anyway. But anyway, so what?
Maybe not much.
Yeah. So I feel that there's just a lot of Lashon Hara that circulates. And so I don't know of anyone who I would say that person is trustable like two witnesses. I would be very, very reluctant to rely on this and say, oh, well, the Beis Din, that guy, Yankel, everyone knows that whatever he says, his word is his bond, and you can trust him. Because there's rumors start, and okay. Now, Isa b'Shulchan Aruch de Asur linhog kalas rosh b'shliach Beis Din, that the Shulchan Aruch writes that you're not allowed to taunt any representative of the Beis Din. V'hamitzaro yesh rishus lebeistin lahakoso me'akas mardus. That if anyone causes the shliach of the beistin, like the secretary of the beistin, if you cause him tsar, then the beistin has permission to give that fellow lashes who's causing the secretary of the beistin tsar. Right, you're mechutin. Yeah, right. Shaliach neman kishnayim lahayid shebizuhu ve'ein bazem mishum lashon hara. The shliach beistin can say that this person who I sent a summons to, or I'm trying to get to come to Beistin, has called me all sorts of names and has, a lot of times the shliach of the Beistin will get a lot of abuse. Yeah, you got to have a thick skin in order to be able to do this. Yeah. Anyway, so let me just see before we go on to the next halacha. Let's see here. I see that it's on Safaria, so let's take a look. Sholom Eshiv. Here we go. Here we go. Cool. Hold on. Siman Lamed. Okay. L'chacham echad. Here's the tshuva. So we can start this from Rav Nathan's big posek.
What about any relation to Wayne?
Maybe. I don't know. Is Wayne on today? So let me share my screen. Let's see. This. Wait a minute. Oh. Share screen. Shal ma'alaso be'im tzarech lahayid al adam echad shehu bechezkes kasher im tzarech shnei edim osagi be'ed echad. You want to testify about someone who's not who's behaving incorrectly, but up until now he has a proper chazaka. Do you need two witnesses in order for the community rabbis or the Beis Din to hear your testimony, or is one witness sufficient? The cost of shalomat sadavar bazev barishonim, and this particular chacham says, I haven't found anything in the Rishonim. Ine bechidusha lemishnayos uberambam kasafti bahada amru beperk dalad demai mikan neman amar le echarani eni neman ploni neman hareza neman. That there's apparently there's a mishnah in Demai that says mikan nemar amar le echad ani eni neman ploni neman. He says, don't believe me, but believe somebody else. Then you're allowed to believe that fellow if he says that someone is reliable. That, and the Gemara, the Yerushalmi asks, since when is one person's testimony that person is neman? I guess on the laws of Demai. Since when is one witness reliable? And the Gemara answers, when you're dealing with travelers, you can be lenient. Okay, I just want to get to the Tamtzit. Okay, he says, it quotes a Gemara in Rosh Hashanah, the Chad lo meheman, that one witness is not believable. The Hatanya Maisa B'Rabbi Nahoroi Shaholach Lahaid Alav V'Harei Shamari Lahaid Al Ha'ed Shekashahu. There was one person, a Rabbi Nahoroi, who went to testify that one person is a kosher aid. So Harei Echad Melam Lahaidim Kashahu. Hang on, Mr. Natan, right? He says normally, however, you do need two witnesses. Okay. That's right. That was the case over there. So he brings back and forth a number of different rayas.
So this is just for financial matters, or it's also for capital matters?
Well, here the issue is the guy wants to be your chazan for the Yomim Noraim, and it doesn't necessarily have to deal with a financial matter. Is he a correct? Does he behave correctly in his personal life?
Main criteria for selection cousin.
Yeah,
That's really important for the.
yeah, for
That
sure.
is more important than their voice.
Yeah, that's for sure true. Yeah.
So they make a background check for the person. If somebody applied to make a background check.
Absolutely. We once had a guy in a shul that I was previously a rabbi. He applied to be the chazan, and his friend was a member of the shul, and he wanted me to hire the guy. And I said, I'm not going to hire the guy. And he said, why? I said, because he's chewing gum while he's davening, or he's got a candy in his mouth. I said, I'm not going to hire a guy who's sucking on a candy while he's davening. Oh, he needs it because, it gives him saliva. I said, that's great. But number one, you're not allowed to have anything in your mouth while you're davening. And maybe if he needs it for his saliva, that's one thing if he's a regular guy, but he wasn't a serious person. Okay, it's a much longer tshuva, so we won't go into it today. Okay.
In case it seems strange that there wouldn't have been a second witness in a public place somewhere behaving poorly.
Yeah, but not necessarily. You don't know. I mean, you have this one guy who's traveled in the shtetl. Everyone else stays home in the shtetl.
He doesn't need to go to the show and say, is there anyone else who knows this?
Yeah.
But if the witness sees somebody doing something that they should not be responsible, they would either approach the person or warn them or something of that nature. Like, I mean, you can't just watch them go and do something and then go away and tittle-tattle on.
Correct. Sometimes what's appropriate is to go to the Rav privately and say, first of all, it's appropriate to say to the Rav, I saw a certain individual do something that I feel is a questionable character. This is a person who may want to be a shliach tzibor, and I want to know, what should I do about it? Should I approach the individual? Should I tell you about it? Should I tell?
Before you mentioned the name.
Right. Should I tell the Rav of the shul about it? In other words, it's appropriate to get instruction from someone who you respect as a posek and as a Talmud Chacham. Ask them, here's my dilemma. What should I do? Okay. Yeah.
I thought I'll take a case because it's different. If you see somebody about to do something, injure somebody else, or they're in a, you need to warn them, or they're going to break Shabbos. You need to warn them that what they're doing is bad.
Right. That's if you can prevent them. But let's say you see a guy being machal Shabbos. You're on vacation in Florida. He's driving his car on Shabbos, and then he applies to be the rabbi of the shul.
That could be an emergency. Maybe he's with the hospital, so you have to investigate.
Could be. So you have to. In the course, first of all, you have to be done l'kapschus. Maybe he had an emergency, right? Or you walk down to the beach, right? And on Shabbos, and you see this guy, behaving inappropriately, right? And then whatever.
There's no medical emergency there.
Maybe there was. Maybe she was spreading the breed.
There you go.
Always the benefit of the doubt.
Okay, yeah, he was giving her mouth to mouth. Right. Right. Okay. Okay, so let's go to the Likutim. Let's go to the Likutim, which is right. It gives us practical cases. You have to be capable of testifying in order to be obligated to testify. Lafuke karov, to exclude if you're a relative. If you're a relative, then you shouldn't. You are exempt from testifying, and therefore you have no obligation to go to Beis Din. Ve'eluhein hapsulim. Who is puzzle to be a witness? Ha'achim zeim ze harehem rishon b'rishon. Two brothers. A brother cannot testify for a brother. Uvenehem zeim ze b'sheni. That the sons of the two brothers, first cousins, are also not capable of being witnesses. Uvenehem zeim ze harehem shlishi b'shlishi. Second cousins, in other words, grandchildren of two brothers, also cannot testify for each other. Rishon o sheni b'sheni, Rishon b'sheni o b'sheni b'sheni psulim l'kuliyal. Now, an uncle and a nephew, also psulim, sheni b'sheni, first cousins, everyone agrees they're puzzle. Avo rishon b'shlishi ve'ein tzarech lomer shlishi b'sheni ksherim. He says, but if you have, let's say, we're talking about 3 generations, right? First generation brothers, second generation, first cousins, third generation, second cousins, okay? First generation with a third generation, and for third generation with second generation, which would be called first cousins once removed. So that technically is kosher. And some say that a shlishi with a rishon is pasul, and that's the proper way to paskin. This is the Ramah. Now, this has relevance for, let's say, who you choose as a witness to sign your ksuva, who can be a witness at a wedding, and so forth and so on. I will tell you this, the common practice, and I had to show this to someone in writing. I think it was from one of the modern poskim, one of the modern gedolim had paskin, and I sent this to a fellow, that as a general practice, you don't accept any family members whatsoever to be witnesses, even if they're third or fourth cousins, and even if they're only related through marriage. Even though technically it's kosher, but our minhag is to not permit anyone who's even distantly related to be on both sides to be a witness at a wedding. The reason, for everything. And the reason why we do that is because it can get confusing, because you have to start calculating these things. Yeah.
They were witnesses. And Rabbi Bitterman said, I think we're somehow related. You were there actually.
Oh, yeah.
And it's okay. That's it out for another witness.
Who, Rabbi Lowy said this?
No, Rabbi Bitterman said.
To you or to Rabbi Lowy?
To Rabbi Lowy and to us. We all were there. And you said, okay, name another witness. Just to prevent.
Yeah, right.
Because they want to say, Rabbi Lowy said, are you sure? Well, yeah, remember, and
Two witnesses related to each other.
Yes, somehow they think they were related. They weren't sure.
Probably through marriage.
So Rabbi Lowy said, are you sure? Rabbi said, yeah, remember, and she started saying names, and Rabbi Lowy said, I don't remember. So you said, you know what? Well, just to prevent call another witness. So we called another witness.
Yeah.
Rabbi Eisenberg came to rescue.
That's great. That's great. Wow, you had some people.
Yeah, down.
What's that?
Choose. Rabbi Lowy, Rabbi Bitterman.
Well, I gotta let Rabbi Lowy
say.
Yeah. Yeah, no. I mean, it's Rabbi Lowy's much more, much older. Yeah.
One is to say.
Yeah.
I don't want to say.
Yeah. Okay. Kol Kolisha sha'ata pasula ata pasula baila. If you and a woman are related, then her husband is also, by marriage, you're related to him as well. Shahabal ki ishta. Because a husband is like his wife for all of these halachos. B'chol ba'al sha'ata pasulo kachata pasula ishto sheha. And if you and a man are related, so then you're puzzle for his to be a witness for his wife as well. Ach mikol makom gam lahaposlim shlishi barishon kanal machshirin beishto mipnei shuhu muflag. He says, but let's say it's a first generation with a third generation and related through marriage. Some say that's perfectly kosher. Kol shtei nashim shehem zu im zu sheni b'sheni. If two women are, let's say, first cousins, ba'alehem me'idim zelazeh, their husbands can testify for each other. The yeser, the tray ba'al ki'ishto d'sheni b'sheni lo amrina, because that's already too distant. To say that a husband is like his wife and their cousins, so those are kosher. Mi'u lechatchila lo yachtamu al shtar b'yachad. But lechatchila, they should not sign on a shtar together. Two wives that are first cousins, their husbands should not sign on a ksuva together. Rishonim sheni amrinan behu trei baal keishto, v'yeshomim delo amrinan behu trei baal keishto v'cheiner li lahoros. And again, first generation was second generation husbands of the two wives. So machlokes ulefize b'nei dodot rishonot ba'alehen kesherim lahoid zelazel yacharach lechatchila yesh leimana kanal. But so technically these are kosher, but you should lechatchila, you should prevent it. Avi chatan va'avi kala pirish mechutan meidim zelazeh. A mechutan can testify, can be a witness for his other mechutan. That's brought down in Shulchan Aruch. Ha'edim shekrovim zelazeh shekrovim l'dayanim psulim. But witnesses who are relatives to each other, or that if they're relatives to the dayanim, they are pasul. So therefore, it's not just a relative of the person for whom you're testifying, but if you're a relative of the dayan or a relative of the witness, so then you are pasul, right? So mechutanim, however, are kosher to testify for each other. That was actually the case where I had in a wedding, I said that a mechutin should not testify, even though technically Shulchan Aruch is machshir. But I said we don't permit at all, and we're not going to get started on this. All right, right, right. Women's testimony is possible. Yeah, they're not admissible in a beis din. However, there are situations where if a woman is an eyewitness to something, then the beis din will permit her to testify. And sometimes a beis din uses discretion in accepting different people's testimony based on, just to be able to get circumstantial evidence, right? They may not be able to act upon it, let's say, to extract money, but they could. It certainly would help them to come to a conclusion on how to paskin on a situation where there are no other witnesses.
Yeah, the woman is the second witness. In case we talk about where you have one witness. Would that make a difference?
No. I'm trying to remember if I've ever seen it.
Just for circumstantial evidence.
I have to go back and think if I've ever seen this in a beis din. But certainly with mumminus, I don't think I've ever seen it. Chalitza. Yeah, I mean, if she's a party to it, right? And forgetting. Right. Yes, the Gemara says that a woman is reliable to testify. That's very good. Yes, it's a whole Gemara in Yavamas. Yeah, absolutely. Krove hamuke yicholin lahayd al hamake legarsho ibeis haknesses oshar onish dome lezem mishum shein toles lamuka be'iduso. If a person is, let's say, has been beaten up by somebody, then the relatives of the guy that's been beaten up can testify about a guy who's been doing the beating. to get him ejected from the Beis HaKnesses. Because why? There's no benefit to the victim through that testimony. In other words, what is he? That he says literally, oh, a person, he says it's no different from a person who has been robbed. He's allowed to testify to Beis Din if he's himself is the victim. Right. So if a person is a victim of another person's abuse, then you're allowed to testify in Beis Din. And the relatives also can testify on his behalf. Domestic violence, yeah. All right, we'll have to hold it here for today.